Hello, my name is Rachel Wade and I serve as the Vice President of Strategy at United Way of Southwest Michigan. And thank you for tuning into this video on our Partner Memorandum of Agreement for our 2022 to 2025 funding cycle. United Way of Southwest Michigan feels really strongly about sharing this entire PMOA with you before you seek funding so that you know what you're getting yourself into. It's not really as bad as that makes it sound, but you do need to understand the expectations right up front. And if you find yourself wondering if you can meet them or not, then you need to seriously consider if United Way funding is the right option for you. So this video is being developed to provide a high-level view of the most significant points in this PMOA. I would strongly recommend that you read the entire document because this video will not get into every nitty-gritty detail. We know that we are not your only funder. For many of you, in fact, our funding could represent a relatively small percentage of your overall program or project budget. But the difference between us and other funders is that the money we're investing isn't really ours. It belongs to the community, and they have entrusted us to invest it on their behalf in ways that will create the most impact possible. So to be good stewards of those donor dollars, we have to have accountability mechanisms that enable us to report back to our donors and assure them that their hard-earned philanthropic contributions have actually accomplished what we told them they would. At the same time, though, we do not want those accountability mechanisms to be so cumbersome that you spend more time working on compliance than you do on actually impacting the community. Essentially, we need to get out of the way and trust you to do your work. So creating a balance between accountability and trust can be tricky, but it is essential to having a productive professional partnership. So it is with that spirit that we have redesigned our Partner Memorandum of Agreement for the next funding cycle. So let's start with our commitment to you. In addition to the funding that we will allocate to your programs or projects, listed here are a few of the high-level points. Again, I really do recommend that you read the entire PMOA. So a good portion of our success as an organization depends on you. We are invested in your success. So to that end, we will take and create opportunities to tell your story and those of the entire family of United Way Impact Partners. We will work hard every year through our annual campaign and other fundraising strategies to raise money to support our 3-year investments. We will not overstep our bounds and tell you how to run your organization. We may give you feedback from time to time, but we acknowledge the authority that your board and staff leadership have to direct your organization as you see fit. Believe it or not, organizations sometimes have needs beyond just funding. So periodically we will offer training and other capacity building opportunities to strengthen the nonprofit community in Southwest Michigan. The last point that I want to make is that our funding decisions will be made as objectively as possible by trained community volunteers. Now really hear me on that one. Volunteers make the funding decisions, not staff. Our volunteers use our staff as subject matter experts and consultants, but because this is the community's money, we want the community to have ownership over how it gets invested. In the actual PMOA, your list looks longer than ours, but most of the requirements can be summed up in a few high-level bullets. But again, please read the entire document. So first and foremost, keep us informed. Informed of what? Everything. People talk. They talk about the good, and they really talk about the bad. So if something is changing in your organization, especially with the program or project that we might be funding, please tell us. The fastest way to damage a relationship is for us to hear important information second or third hand. Another way to damage the relationship is to fail to acknowledge that relationship. I already said that we'll talk about you. We expect that you'll talk about us too. You will be given various versions of our logo to use on any and all materials that pertain to the program or project that we fund. This helps educate the community about the vast reach that United Way has, which helps us be more relevant, which then helps us raise more money. But the biggest thing we need from you is just to fulfill the requirements laid out in the PMOA. It might seem overwhelming at first, but what I hope you'll soon realize is that a lot of the things we ask you for are things that you already do or have. We just want to copy. One requirement that is new this year is that every impact partner will need to have an organizational equity statement. This commitment to equity is new for us too, so we won't leave you hanging out on a limb. There are samples of equity statements available on our website, and our team is happy to help walk your organization through this process if that would be helpful. We are giving you 1 year from the beginning of the funding cycle to create the statement, so it's okay if you don't have one prior to the funding application deadline. Just know that if our volunteers choose to fund you and you agree to accept the funding, you are also agreeing to create the statement within 1 year, and failure to do so will put your funding in jeopardy. Lastly, you will notice that there are 2 different sections on page 2 of the PMOA. One says what impact partners will do, and the other says what they should do. The items in this list are not required, but they are things that we consider to be best practices. These include listing your services in 211 and your volunteer opportunities in Volunteer United. Also, from time to time, we offer trainings, opportunities to participate in evaluation projects, or we ask your organization to provide a tour, speak at an event, or provide volunteer projects for corporate groups. Again, these things are not required, but they are great ways to build capacity or create good exposure for your organization. And finally, we have changed our expectations around running a fundraising campaign for United Way with your staff and board. This is no longer a requirement. Now, we would absolutely love for you to run a campaign, but we also acknowledge that this can be a real pain point for some of you for many different reasons. So if you receive funding, we will reach out to see if you are interested, but again, running a campaign will not be a requirement. On page 3, you'll see where staff and board leads of your organization and ours all sign this PMOA, indicating that everyone agrees to what is laid out in it and that we'll all hold up our end of the bargain. My biggest ask of you in this entire process is that you fully understand that this is an agreement between 2 organizations, not between the individual people in the organizations. When people change at any level of the organization, we expect that obligations will still be met. So for example, if we get a new finance person, it really shouldn't matter to you. You should expect that you'll still receive your monthly allocation just like always. Similarly, if you get a new executive director or program manager, we expect that you'll still submit your progress reports on time. Bottom line, make sure that more than one person in your organization understands the relationship and at the very least knows where to find this PMOA. While the relationship between our organizations is stewarded by people, it is still a relationship between our organizations. So put processes in place to institutionalize it, because a change in staffing will not be an excuse for non-compliance. All right, Appendix A, which covers reporting and evaluation, is the biggest section of the PMOA and probably the most important, but don't let that scare you. The last 2 pages of that section are hopefully parts that none of you will ever have to worry about, but let's dig in anyway. The first section in Appendix A lists out the different things you will need to report to us and when. We have significantly streamlined this process from previous funding cycles. It will look like a long list, but certain elements now only need to be reported on yearly instead of every 6 months. In addition, the budget section has been redeveloped and greatly simplified, which I know many of you will appreciate. The second section refers to confidentiality and data sharing. The third section covers EC Impact, which is the online reporting system that we use. The fourth section provides details for our reporting deadlines. Please pay careful attention to this section. Here you will find very specific information about deadlines and what happens if you miss them. It's worth noting that we take this section very seriously. Amanda Drew will always provide ample communication regarding each deadline as it approaches. But if you receive United Way funding, when you receive this PMOA, I would suggest that you put those reporting deadlines on your calendar right at the outset so that you don't lose sight of them. The next section covers revisions and changes. Then we get into our evaluation process, which is how we make and monitor our investments. The last two sections outline what happens if there are concerns about the program or project that we are funding. This does happen from time to time and is usually rectified fairly easily. And like I said back on slide 4, we respect your authority to lead your organization as you see fit, and we will not attempt to micromanage. But also, like I said, a foundational element of our organizational philosophy is that we must be a good steward of the donor dollar. There are programs that have lost United Way funding in the past. That was not a rashly made decision. We need a strong nonprofit community, so when we have concerns, our first line of defense is to offer support. We will never end the funding without first having put a tremendous amount of effort into helping you succeed. But if a time comes when we just can't see eye to eye, these sections of the PMOA outline the process that will be used. We are almost done, I promise. Appendix B is the last section of the PMOA, and it provides additional detail and definitions for some of the information that was provided in the previous sections. So first up is allocation adjustments. We make 3-year funding commitments with the hopes that our fundraising strategies will continue to be successful year after year. But in the off chance that something catastrophic happens, we do reserve the right to decrease allocations mid-cycle if need be. On the flip side, if we achieve unimaginable success, it is possible that we could increase allocations. The bad news is that we've never been in a position to increase allocations. But the good news is that since we began using a 3-year process, we've also never been in a position to decrease allocations. The next section covers caveats and contingencies. Our volunteers may create certain stipulations for your funding. Those will be presented to you when the funding decisions are announced and will be included in the beginning of your PMOA. The co-marketing section lists how we would like you to identify United Way as a funder of your program or project, and a branding kit will be provided to you. United Way allows our donors to designate their contributions to specific programs or projects. These designations are honored over and above your allocation. But please be aware that if you run a campaign for United Way, your staff cannot self-designate back to your programs or projects. The next section talks about what happens if your organization experiences a merger or acquisition with another organization. The section after that talks about running a campaign for United Way. After that is information about the State Employee Combined Campaign, which is the mechanism that is used to solicit contributions from state employees. United Way participates as a local federation, which gives all of our impact partners the ability to participate as well. We do have certain up-to-date documentation, we do have to have certain up-to-date documentation on hand for your organization to participate. So if you don't keep those current with us, then you may miss out on the SECC. And the last section references the equity statement that you will be required to have that I mentioned back in slide 5. So that was it. I know partner agreements aren't the most exciting to talk about, but I hope that this has given you at least a good understanding of what the expectations will be for you if your organization does receive United Way funding. If at any point in time you have any questions about this, please do not hesitate to reach out. And thanks.